Good evening, dear dreamers, both big and small. As the crickets begin their nightly chorus and the moon hangs like a silver lantern in the sky, we're about to embark on another bedtime adventure. Wrap yourself in your coziest blanket, rest your head on your softest pillow, and feel the day's excitement settle into a peaceful anticipation. The tale we'll explore tonight, Goodnight Dinosaurs, is a key to unlock the door of your imagination. As the fiery sun began to sink below the horizon of the ancient Earth, painting the prehistoric sky in brilliant hues of orange and red, young Tricky the Triceratops stood at the edge of a vast flowering meadow, his small eyes wide with wonder. The day's warmth was giving way to the cooler evening air, filled with the rich scents of ferns, cycads, and the earthy aroma of the nearby swamp. Tricky loved his Cretaceous world, with its lush vegetation, diverse creatures, and the constant buzz of prehistoric life. "Mama," Tricky said, nudging his mother's massive leg with his small horn, "do dinosaurs go to sleep like the tiny creatures do?" His mother, a formidable Triceratops with impressive horns and a colorful frill, looked down at him with gentle eyes. "Well, Tricky, different dinosaurs have their own special ways of saying goodnight. Would you like to learn about them?" Tricky nodded eagerly, his little tail wagging with excitement. "All right then," his mother said, beginning to walk towards a nearby forest. "Let's watch the dinosaur world say goodnight together." As they ambled along, the last rays of sunlight filtered through the towering trees, casting long shadows across the ground. Tricky's mother began to speak in a soft, soothing voice. "You see, Tricky, as day turns to night, the prehistoric world begins to whisper its goodnights to all the creatures that call it home. It starts with the smallest beings first." Tricky leaned forward, straining his ears to hear the whispers of the ancient world. Down in the soil, his mother continued, using her horn to gently turn over a patch of earth. The tiny insects that have been busy all day begin to slow their activity. They burrow deeper into the ground, taking a break from their important work. Tricky imagined the prehistoric bugs snuggling into tiny dirt beds, and he giggled at the thought. But next, his mother said as they moved on, the small reptiles and early mammals say goodnight. "Look over there." She pointed with her horn to a fallen log, where a small, furry creature was curling up in a hollow. "That's a primitive mammal. It's finding a safe spot to rest for the night." As they walked deeper into the forest, the shadows grew longer, and the air became filled with new sounds. The first croaks of giant amphibians, the rustle of leaves as pterosaurs settled into the trees, and the distant roar of a large carnivore. "And now," Tricky's mother continued, her voice low and rhythmic, "as the night grows deeper, the larger dinosaurs prepare for rest. Many of us herbivores find safe places to sleep together in herds." They emerged from the forest into a large clearing where a group of Parasaurolophus were settling down for the night. The duck-billed dinosaurs huddled together, their crests creating an impressive silhouette against the darkening sky. "Some dinosaurs, like our Parasaurolophus friends," Tricky's mother explained, "sleep standing up, ready to quickly flee if danger approaches. Others lie down to rest." Tricky watched in awe as the large dinosaurs arranged themselves, with some remaining alert while others closed their eyes. As they continued their walk, Tricky began to notice how different the prehistoric world looked and felt as night approached. The vibrant colors of day were fading into softer, mysterious shades. Strange shadows played among the trees and ferns, creating an enchanting new world. "What about the meat eaters, Mama?" Tricky asked, a hint of nervousness in his voice. "Ah, the carnivores," his mother said, giving him a reassuring nuzzle. "Many of them are most active during twilight hours. As we settle down to sleep, they begin their hunts." A shiver ran down Tricky's spine, both from excitement and a touch of fear. "But remember," she added, they also need to rest. Even the mighty Tyrannosaurus Rex finds a quiet place to sleep when it's full and tired. As the light faded further, Tricky began to feel sleepy himself. He yawned, but fought to keep his eyes open, not wanting to miss any of the prehistoric bedtime routine. "Mama," he asked through another yawn, "what about the flying reptiles? How do they say goodnight?" His mother smiled, pleased with Tricky's curiosity. The pterosaurs have their own nighttime habits. Many find high perches in cliffs or tall trees. Some, like the small pterodactyls, roost in large groups for safety. As if on cue, a flock of pterodactyls flew overhead, their leathery wings silent in the evening air as they headed towards a distant cliff face. They paused by a small lake, its surface reflecting the colors of the sunset. "And let's not forget the water-dwelling creatures," Tricky's mother said softly. "Plesiosaurs and other marine reptiles need to surface for air, even while resting. They have special ways of sleeping that allow them to breathe while staying alert for danger." Indeed, as Tricky watched, he saw the long neck of a plesiosaur emerge from the water, take a breath, and then slowly sink back beneath the surface. As night deepened, Tricky and his mother found a comfortable spot in a small grove of cycad trees. The air was filled with the sounds of the nocturnal prehistoric world. The buzz of giant insects, the splash of creatures in the nearby swamp, and the occasional roar echoing in the distance. "Our world has its own special nightlife," Tricky's mother said, her voice blending with the prehistoric symphony around them. "While some creatures rest, others come alive, creating a beautiful balance in our ancient ecosystem." Tricky nodded sleepily, his imagination filled with images of hunting carnivores, soaring pterosaurs, and gentle giants settling down to sleep. "But what about the plants, Mama?" he asked, fighting to keep his eyes open. "Do they sleep too?" His mother looked impressed by the question. "The plants have their own way of resting, Tricky. While they don't sleep like we do, many flowers close their petals at night." The great ferns and cycads continued to grow slowly in the darkness, reaching for the stars. Tricky closed his eyes, imagining the towering plants stretching their fronds towards the night sky, growing ever so slightly in the quiet darkness. In his mind, he could almost hear their whispered conversations, sharing stories of the day's events through their ancient root systems. As the night wore on, Tricky and his mother sat in comfortable silence, listening to the nocturnal symphony of their prehistoric world. The air was filled with a medley of sounds: the gentle rustle of ferns in the breeze, the distant bellow of a sauropod, the constant buzz of insects, and the occasional splash from the nearby lake. "Mama," Tricky said after a while, his voice thick with sleepiness, "I think I can hear the dinosaur world saying goodnight." His mother nuzzled him gently. "What does it sound like, my little one?" Tricky was quiet for a moment, concentrating hard. "It sounds like a big magical song. Like when our herd calls to each other, but bigger and with lots of different voices. It's beautiful and makes all the dinosaurs and other creatures feel like they're part of something amazing." His mother's eyes shone with pride in the starlight. "That's wonderful, Tricky. I think you've understood our world's good night perfectly." As they sat there, embraced by the night and the soothing presence of the prehistoric earth, Tricky's mother began to hum softly. It was a low, rumbling sound that seemed to blend seamlessly with the noises around them, creating a perfect dinosaur lullaby. Tricky's eyelids grew heavier, and he leaned against his mother's strong leg, feeling safe and content. As he drifted off to sleep, he imagined all the prehistoric creatures settling into their nighttime routines. The herbivores huddled in protective groups, the carnivores finding quiet places to rest, the pterosaurs perched on high cliffs, and the marine reptiles floating peacefully in the dark waters. In his dreams, Tricky soared over the prehistoric landscape like a pteranodon. He helped baby dinosaurs find cozy nesting spots and played hide-and-seek with small mammals in the underbrush. He swam with plesiosaurs in moonlit lakes and slid down the backs of sleeping sauropods. The ancient world cradled him in its primal embrace, whispering secrets of evolution, survival, and the incredible diversity of life in this long-ago time. As the night wore on, a gentle mist began to rise from the swamps and rivers, wrapping around the bases of the great trees and ferns. Dewdrops formed on leaves and fronds, each one a tiny world reflecting the star-filled sky above. In a nearby cave, a pack of small feathered dinosaurs huddled together, their downy coverings shimmering softly in the dim light. Tricky slept peacefully beside his mother, his dreams filled with the wonders of the prehistoric world. His mother kept a watchful eye on their surroundings, ever alert for danger, yet marveling at the peaceful beauty of the nighttime landscape. As the first light of dawn began to tinge the eastern sky, Tricky stirred in his sleep. His mother gently nudged him awake. "Tricky," she whispered, "it's time to wake up. Our world is saying good morning." Tricky's eyes fluttered open, and he looked around in momentary confusion before remembering where he was. He stood up, shaking off the night's rest, and then gasped in delight at the sights and sounds around him. The prehistoric world, which had been full of nocturnal life through the night, was now transitioning again. The night creatures were settling down, while the daytime animals were beginning to stir. The air was filled with a chorus of dinosaur calls, each species adding its voice to the magnificent dawn symphony. "Look, Mama," Tricky exclaimed, pointing with his small horn at a nearby clearing where a herd of Stegosaurus was beginning to move, their back plates catching the first rays of sunlight. "Everyone's waking up," his mother nodded, smiling. "That's right, Tricky. Just like us, our whole world has its own way of greeting the new day." As they watched, the golden light of the rising sun began to flood the landscape, bringing the prehistoric Earth to vibrant life. A flock of colorful feathered dinosaurs took to the air, their scales and feathers gleaming as they searched for the morning's first meal. In the distance, a group of long-necked sauropods began their day's journey, their footsteps making the ground tremble slightly. "Mama," Tricky said, his voice filled with awe, "can we say good morning to our world?" His mother smiled and nodded. "Of course we can. Why don't you go ahead?" Tricky took a deep breath, puffed out his little chest, and called out as loud as he could, "Good morning, dinosaur world. Thank you for letting me see you say goodnight. I hope everyone had wonderful dreams." As if in response, a chorus of dinosaur calls echoed across the landscape, from the high-pitched chirps of small carnivores to the deep, resonant bellows of the largest herbivores. Tricky giggled, imagining that the whole prehistoric world was giving him a grand good morning greeting. His mother nuzzled him affectionately. "Come on, Tricky, let's join our herd for some breakfast. We can spend the day exploring and see how our world changes from morning to afternoon." As they walked towards the grazing grounds, Tricky took one last look at the awakening prehistoric landscape. Every tree, every creature, every rock seemed to pulse with life and energy, full of promise for the new day ahead. Tricky smiled, feeling like he now shared a special secret with his ancient world, the knowledge of how it said good night and good morning to all its wonderful inhabitants. From that day on, whenever Tricky roamed the prehistoric lands, whether during bright Cretaceous days or in the cool of the evening, he always made sure to wish his world and its creatures a good night or a good morning. And as he grew older, becoming a strong and wise Triceratops, he never forgot the magic of that night when he learned about his world's bedtime routine. It instilled in him a lifelong love and respect for the incredible diversity of life around him, a gift as precious and enduring as the legacy of the dinosaurs themselves. And so, as we end our tale, we too bid goodnight to the world of dinosaurs, to its towering forests and vast plains, to its mighty carnivores and gentle giants, to all its visible and invisible marvels. May it inspire us in our dreams and remind us of the incredible history of life on Earth, forever a source of wonder and discovery in our world. Good night, dinosaurs, until we meet again in our imaginations and in the fossils that tell your amazing stories.